the water of the unconscious is shaping the form of the earth that we live on. It shapes the terra firma that we get to stand on. And so we have to be in relationship with the waters of the unconscious in order to be actually on solid ground with ourselves in our waking life. Welcome to Soror Mystica, a podcast exploring life's mysteries and magic through its symbols.
I'm Mariana Lewis, an archetypal tarotist.
And I'm astrologer Christina Farella.
And just as the Soror Mystica guided the alchemist through his holy work, we hope to be your mystic sisters in these conversations, guiding you deeper into the symbolic life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 40 of Soror Mystica. We are here in the heat of summer, and we're going to be talking about the symbol of the ocean, which is something that we can hold in our minds to try to cool ourselves down.
I was going to say, so we can cool down.
I would love to jump into the ocean right now, but I can't. And so we're going to kind of hold space with this really beautiful symbol that has a lot of complexity to it, and really guides us into interesting explorations of the feminine, of dreams, and of the kind of collective unconscious in a really particular way. So that's what's going on. We are also going to be announcing our next book club book. Like right now. So our next book club book is going to be Robert Johnson's book, Owning Your Shadow.
Yep.
And we're going to be meeting in mid-August. The date is TBD. My life is very crazy. My partner is defending his dissertation in mid-August, and then I'm moving. And so if you're watching the video, you can see my messy boxes and books.
She's coming home to me, guys. She's coming back.
East Coast.
We're
After
gonna
long,
we're gonna not be 2,000 miles apart anymore, which is gonna be very exciting. 500 and under place.
Mm-hmm. I've been out here for 7 years, almost 7 years, which is a whole quarter of a Saturn cycle. And so I think that that's really interesting thinking about when I moved out here. You know, Saturn right now is in Pisces. Saturn was in Sagittarius when I moved out here. And so a whole kind of pressure cooker of like coming into self and maturity and growth and stuff has happened. And now it's like the wheel is turning and there's something else that comes through. So I don't know, but I will survive somehow. But everyone say a prayer for me.
Everyone say the prayer.
I just told Mariana this because it's cute. And this is not a complaint at all about my partner, but I gave him the task of going through our many books and making a pile of ones that we can try to sell or donate. And instead, what he did was he went through all the books and made piles of the ones that we must keep. And so,
which is exactly what I would do too.
Does not help me weed through anything, but it's great. It's all good. And it's an adorable impulse. So I'm just amazed by how messy everything is going to get, but that's okay.
You're going to do it. It's going to happen. So that's Christina. I just had a pipe burst this morning. So water is abounding.
Water is happening.
Just made that connection. So we're here and we're living. And so Owning Your Shadow is a great, great book for anybody who's interested in shadow work. Because it does kind of talk about shadow work, but it talks about like how to connect to your shadow, what it is, like, you know, what it tells you about yourself, how to explore it, how to befriend it and find love through it. It's really short and really precious book. So, and we'll definitely talk about shadow work too in our discussion of it, because I've thought a lot about how to do shadow work, you know, using the principles that Robert Johnson talks about. So
you've taught classes on shadow work. Yep. You're like a shadow work queen.
I have been forced into it happily, but it took me a while to be like, how do I even do this? And then I was like, oh no, I have to. So anyway, it's going to be great. Really hope to see people there. What are you reading right now?
What am I reading?
You're not reading anything.
Eyelids, if I can read anything. No, I'm actually reading a book of essays by Christina Campo, and I'm like laughing like the inside of my eyelids. I'm also not sleeping, so that's a lie. I'm reading a book of essays by this Italian writer Christina Campo called The Unforgivables, and it is an excellent collection of essays on poetry, fairy tales, mythology, and just like literature. It's just like literary criticism.
Beautiful.
It's basically what I wish I could write if I had time and space. And yeah, I keep taking pictures of pages of it to send to you, and then I keep forgetting. But there are some really beautiful passages on what symbols do and what poets do, and it's really
No,
great.
one day you'll just drop them
Also,
all.
I know, yeah, I'll just get you the book.
I'll be
Um,
excited.
they're also replacing our deck
Oh,
on
yes.
the back of the house to like right now. So if anyone hears crashing, slash Mariana, if you hear crashing, that's what's going on. And
So it's not someone trying to break down your door and
no,
kidnap you.
no, the cats are very scandalized, but it's gonna be fine. And like, good for whoever else rents this place after I'm out of here, because
You
that
get the
deck has
new
been
deck.
that deck has been dangerous for years. Like
Mm-mm.
my foot goes through some of the like
Oh,
planks if I
no.
yeah, we have like an obstacle course of like don't step here. So
Oh, no.
yeah, good for whoever else lives here after me.
Well,
What
that's
are you reading?
I what am I reading? I'm still reading Robert Place's tarot book. I'm
Mhm.
working my way through it. It's actually really interesting because I'm about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way through, so we're just getting into the cards themselves now, but the whole front part of it is like making an argument for why we can actually see the tarot as a mystical device,
Mhm.
basically, because there's all sorts of bad knowledge out there about how the tarot came from Egypt or the Romani people or the Sufis or all this stuff, and all of that. There's influences of that, I'm sure, if you are really looking for it. But it's such a product of Renaissance Italy. It is such
Mhm.
a direct product of Renaissance Italy. It is just covered in the hallmarks of it. And so when people hear that, they kind of freak out and they're like, "Oh my God, it's not special then because it didn't come from the Book of Thoth and it didn't come from these, magical things." And so he puts together like a really compelling argument for like, no, actually, it was a tradition in this time period to put these mystical secrets in everything,
Mhm.
especially these kinds of things. And what is the secret that it is telling? And how did it change to become what it is now? Like the Hermit card, for example. And I really agree with him on this. The best thing it probably originated as was Saturn. It was probably
Mhm.
originally a Saturn
Yeah.
figure because he often in the earliest decks was holding not a lantern but a hourglass.
Oh,
He
wow.
was
That's so
Father
interesting.
Time, Old Man
Mhm.
Time, yeah. So which is of course connected with Kronos and Saturn, and so that then became this other thing, and so the transformation of it is super fascinating. And it, like, as I'm reading it, I'm thinking like, do I one day want to write a book about the transformation of the original tarot to the modern
Yes, you
tarot? And
do,
I'm
and
like,
then I
no,
wanna read it.
kill me. It's so much work because I'd have to do the full researchy thing and
Yeah.
like go and look at the original decks.
I was
And
gonna say, it sounds like you need to get a grant
I need to get a
and
grant.
take a
That's
trip to
basically,
Italy with
I need
me
someone to pay my airfare and I
and
go to France and look
study
at the
and go
woodcuts.
to go to museums. This sounds terrible. I feel bad for you if you have to do this, but you have to take me.
It's very interesting. He puts very interesting theories together that you never read about. So it's just so cool to actually read a real tarot history book.
I should definitely try to get my hands on it,
It's
and,
yeah, and it looks like it's going to be nothing. Like it looks like
mm,
it's just going to be a stupid like run of the mill tarot book because sad to say, but he like was an illustrator. He made his own decks. So the
mm.
illustration style looks very like cartoony
Oh, no.
and just like it's not silly, it just doesn't look like the vibe of what the book is, so the cover makes it kind of like okay.
I know, I hear
So
you.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I'm reading. So Oceans, jumping
Let's talk
into
about the
Oceans.
ocean. Mhm.
um where do you want to start with Oceans? What are your
I have
thoughts?
my symbols book that we can
Great.
start from. So, okay, the ocean is listed here as everything that we basically know, but there's one detail that I thought is interesting to pull out. So, ocean, it says, and everyone, I'm reading from an illustrated encyclopedia of traditional symbols. The primordial waters, chaos, formlessness, material existence, endless motion. It is the source of all life, containing all potentials, the sum of all possibilities in manifestation, and the unfathomable. It is the Great Mother and the anima mundi. Right. And so I think that the ocean also symbolizes the sea of life, which has to be crossed. So every culture has their own sort of version of the gods that are inhabiting the ocean and, where it comes from and stuff like that. But I think that this connection between the anima mundi and water is something that is going to continue to be a thread that we pull on just because of our interests and our work. And um, I think that the feminine as a kind of primary archetype that is connected with the ocean is a very interesting place to take us. So we'll kind of start there.
I love that. In Robert Place's book, he was just talking about the anima mundi and the world card, and it's it's a very feminine figure and image, but he argues that it is, even in the Renaissance tradition, sometimes it is figured as Hermes, sometimes it's presented as Christ. And I thought that was really interesting. But the image that he shared that I love the most with the Anima Mundi is she has her two breasts out and both are like have these streams of water falling back into the ocean. And she's like a mermaid. She has like two tails.
Yeah.
And one stream is milk and one stream is blood. And so there's this idea in it of like the cycling of life-giving liquid and then the death liquid and then that both come from her and that both return to her and then she lives in it. Anyway, that
It's a
isn't
very
this.
lunar image. Super, super lunar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mermaids apparently are often symbols of the anima mundi in Renaissance art, which is something that he picked up in his research that I haven't necessarily noticed before. So for those people who like mermaids,
Yeah.
there you go.
I was obsessed with mermaids as a kid. That was like my jam.
You've said did you like Little Mermaid?
Yes, that was like the only thing that I think that it's honestly a couple of factors, but apparently when my mom was pregnant with my brother, one of my brothers, to like make me basically leave her alone, she would just play Little Mermaid like every single day on
Yeah.
VHS multiple times. And so, I was indoctrinated
You
and
haven't memorized.
I probably do. I haven't seen it in a long
Do you know
time,
I
but
played The Little Mermaid
I
once?
do. I do know that about you.
Yeah, the children's theater is very cute, and I got
It's
to
very
I got to
special.
assassinate myself on stage, and
That's
then
every girl's
becomes
dream.
Seafoam.
Every girl's dream. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well,
Good. We're off to a good start.
great,
So,
great. We're both loopy. We're tired. It's gonna be fun. I think that the ocean. I like so many of those things were surprising to me in that Symbols book. Of course, we know with the ocean we're talking about. It's connected to the lunar experience, right? It's connected
yep.
to the moon and the tides and all of that. Whenever I think about the ocean, it's such a beautiful thing. You are an ocean lover, hardcore.
hmm hmm
I am less inclined towards the ocean because it scares me deeply.
hmm
I have like a
hmm
deep discomfort with it. And I like to tell this story whenever I'm thinking about the ocean because it is so formative to my little Scorpio existence. Which is that when I was 3 years old, my cousins used to live in I think they had a summer house in Kitty Hawk in North Carolina, which is like near the beach. I think it was on the beach. And so we were walking on the beach one day, and it was like sunset, and my mom had gotten me the pink sparkly jelly shoes. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, so if you've heard it, oh well, hear it again, I guess.
It applies perfectly for our
It does.
table today.
And so she got them a size too big because that's what moms do, so that I would grow into them. And so the tide came in and rushed out and it pulled one of my shoes off my tiny little foot. And I had a meltdown, not because I lost my pretty pink shoes, which was sad, of course, but because I was like, where did my shoe go? Where is it now? And I had to picture at 3 years old the vast abyss of the ocean and the infiniteness of it, and the fact that you can never exhaust it. There is no searching that you could ever do that would find all of its limits and find all of its nooks and crannies. And my little shoe, my little essence of myself that I had been attached to me, broke off and got lost in the void. And I had this like existential crisis at 3 years old. of saying you do not get to keep all of yourself. The
Mm.
void, we return to the void, and the void is bigger than us always. And so the ocean for me has become, because of that experience, very much the symbol of the infiniteness, the dark infinite that exists in the world too,
Mhm.
which is scary. And it's not evil. It's just scary because of how vast it is and how small we are ultimately, which I think is also when you really sit and meditate on the idea of the collective unconscious, which I think is very much symbolically linked to the ocean. We can get that kind of feeling about it too, of like, wow, this is huge. This like well of unconsciousness that connects us all, and that can sometimes feel threatening for our poor
Mhm.
little egos, who can't stand up to it. So that's my story about the ocean
I love
that I
your
wanted
ocean
to
story.
want to share. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that I am terrified of it. So, like, I will go into it and like swim around and stuff, but I'm always very aware of how dangerous it is. But I just love being beside it. I love hearing it. I love
Yeah.
throwing myself into it and then coming out. Like, there's just something very purifying about it
Mm-hmm.
that I feel like if I don't see it every like 8 months, then I like at least then I lose my mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is, but I've always been also scared of it. And I've been, like I grew up going to the Jersey Shore a lot and to the beach out on Long Island. And like I've been knocked down and dragged out by waves many times. And that's absolutely terrifying. And
Yeah.
that's always like, oh my God. And so the power of it is very, very frightening to me. But when it's serene, it's like, it
Mm-hmm.
is the most magical thing that I ever experience. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to make wishes into it and talk to it like it's my friend, and
Yeah.
I just always kind of did that when I was a kid, and I'm sure a lot of people listening also did stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think too that there's a familial component of the beach for me. It's actually my mom's birthday today,
Oh my goodness.
and happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Um, she's working today, but she is having her birthday. So we would always go to the ocean for her birthday. And then my grandfather's birthday, her dad's birthday is in July. He's a Leo. And so back to back, like summer family vacation, always to the ocean, always to like Montauk when we
Mm-hmm.
were growing up, or Amagansett. And so I just associate it with like my mom and family stuff and the past. And I think that that's also a good, you know, Cancerian lunar connection to be made from
Yeah.
the ocean. But your shoe story is very important because it is so symbolic of what can happen. And people do get dragged out by like sneaky waves and
Oh yeah.
riptides and never seen again. And it's just,
Oh yeah, it happened to my
yeah.
sister. She got
Ugh.
sucked under, and then everybody in the whole family like went to action. Then we had a
Mhm.
chain of like 6 people trying to pull her because
Mhm.
she got one of those like really sucky ones, it's like,
So scary.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was never really allowed into the ocean part of it. My mom was
Mhm.
super terrified of us getting swept away, so I only
Yeah.
went maybe waist deep ever, and that's I still don't really go in. I'm like
Oh
still
my
scared.
god. We'll go in together. But
Yeah.
who just goes in and goes all the way out, far out that
Can't.
you can't even see him anymore is Michael.
Oh,
My
really?
fiance. Oh yeah, loves to swim and loves to scare the crap out of me and
I'll
be
swim
like,
across a
"I'm
lake, no
fine."
problem. I'm happy to do
But the
that.
ocean
But
is
the
no.
ocean,
Mhm.
I have reverence for it. It's interesting. It very much is kind of associated with the mother archetype. And we
Mhm.
can see that good mother, the healing mother, the gentle mother, the embracing mother in it. That's kind of the way you talk about it. You have those like,
Mhm. Yeah.
ways of describing it. And I very much see it as the terrible mother, the devouring mother, the
Mhm.
scary mother. And it's not a negative thing. It's not bad. It's not like I don't like it. It's that I have this awe
Yeah.
for it.
And we
That,
should. No, we
yes,
totally
yeah.
should. Mhm.
That's like, oh, that's something that I should always be bowing to and never
Mhm.
try to conquer it
Yeah.
by thinking I can do something impressive. So I think that as a symbol, where I would go with it, and there's so many myths, obviously, there's just impossible amount of myths to explore.
Mhm.
But I already mentioned it. I think that in the contemporary way, we can see it as a symbol of the collective unconscious. The
Mhm.
collective unconscious being this idea that, Jung kind of came up with, that there is this this living stream, this living pool, this ocean of material that is foundational to our humanity, that belongs to everybody. Everybody can dip in and pull something up from the collective unconscious. And that's where we get our myths from, and that's where we get the archetypes from, and all of these experiences that unite us come from this ocean of unconscious material. And the reason that the ocean is such a good symbol for that is because when we look at the surface of it, there's nothing to see. If we stare at it,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, well, okay, it looks nice. It's when we dip our head under that we see at first the layer of some fish, and then we go deeper and we see, some big whales. We go deeper and we start seeing dragons and sea beasts and all these things. As you descend farther and farther, there's more and more material that at each level is not visible unless you have descended that low, which is different from looking upward, right, into the sky where everything is kind of clear, maybe far away, can't really make out exactly what it is, but it's visible. So the ocean is um, you know, a very appropriate symbol for how that unconsciousness kind of is so vast and so engulfing and also so layered, and that each
Mhm.
and as farther you go down, the more pressure there is to, the scarier it is, the more intense it is, the less human it is. So I think that's always where I go with the symbol of the ocean.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and I think that when we, landed on this symbol, and it was Mariana's idea, but I thought that it was a great kind of like deepening point from our last episode
Yeah.
on the macrocosm and the microcosm, because we spent so much time talking about the above and the below, and the ocean sits beneath the sky in the kind of whatever diagram of the earth, um, or like a picture of the earth, I should say, that we're looking at, but it is not different necessarily from the sky. It is a different kind of macrocosmic kind
Yeah.
of realm,
Yeah.
and it's the macrocosm of the below, or
Yeah, it's like
the,
the underworld macrocosm
mhm,
almost. Hmm.
yeah, and so, yeah, the lessening of light, the, kind of it gets colder,
Yeah.
and, there's more pressure, as you said, and, there are just places that humans can't go, just like into the sky, but the sky is full of light for the most part. So it is a really mysterious place. And so one of the things that I like to think about with the ocean is dreaming,
Yeah.
and how this is kind of like, because we can't see into the depths that much, we imagine all kinds of creatures like mermaids and like sirens and whatever else kind of like imaginary aquatic creatures that people believed existed for a long time, um, that are part of the imaginary realms,
Hmm.
that the ocean kind of taps us into. There's a formlessness to it
Yeah.
because it's the element of water, and there's something about the kind of way that water and light kind of distort one another as well that feels very dreamy to me. So lots of imagery here coming through that I think is great to connect the sea with dreams.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's like a moon card
Yep.
exploration here.
There's water on a lot of tarot cards. There's, like we have the Six of Swords crossing, and, we have like the Two of Pentacles, and there's like he's on the beach, and so the ocean's behind. But the only card that really engages the ocean is the Moon card, I would
Hmm.
say, because these other things, they seem far away, or maybe a lake, not an ocean kind of a thing. But the Moon card is, we know it's the ocean because we see the crustacean come out of the water, and which
Hmm.
is pointing to the primordial archetypes, the primordial beings arising out of it. And of course, the Moon card also engages the lunar consciousness, which is where we dream, from the place from which we dream. So I think that connection to the ocean is super important. You can't, like any moon card that doesn't have the ocean in it, like in modern decks, I'm like, you're missing something. You have to
Oh yeah,
have
how
that
could you
there.
miss that? That's so
A lot of
crazy.
them don't have it.
How dare they?
Don't get me started. I think that it really ties us to that archetypal experience.
Hmm.
So it's important, that collective unconscious experience too, that the moon card has the ocean in it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was actually just looking through my photos yesterday morning, and I found there was like one evening where I went to a beach at night, and it was like a quarter moon or like a waxing gibbous moon, but it was a clear night and it was just over the water. And it was like, I took pictures. I was again going to send them to you, and then I like lost my mind doing whatever I was doing. But the reflection of that light on the black water in this picture was like so profound. And I remember standing there and being like, this is so archetypal. This is so this is so real.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny that we're talking about this now, but um I think that the lunar component too, even like to bring it back to that anima mundi idea that we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about before, I find the idea of like, the two streams coming from like the breasts on the
Mm-hmm.
world dancer, blood and milk, being so like, first of all, I don't know why, but as a woman, like hearing that, it like makes it like feels like it hurts to
Yeah, I
hear.
know.
Like
The
it gives
first
me some
when
like
he was writing it, I was like, only a man would write it this bluntly, because I was like, ah,
yeah.
ah, ah,
It
God.
feels uncomfortable in my head, but but it's there's something about that blood milk connection that is a legit thing because, I've read that in, at least one other astrology book, Demetra George talking about the moon and the archetypes of lunar consciousness, and how the moon kind of changing in its shape all the time, changing in its form, and also taking on the red light of a shadow during eclipses
Yeah.
has this an association with obviously like, the womb, menstruation, the shedding of blood, and then
Yeah.
also the nurturing of like the giving of life to a child via breastfeeding. So it's a really strange kind of dichotomy that comes up from like the nurture and then the kind of like that scary sort of shedding of the blood idea.
Yeah.
And that I think brings us back to the devouring mother versus the kind of nurturing mother that the ocean can kind of symbolize. So that's there. I was going to say something else about that, and I forget, but something else that's coming through is obviously we need to talk about how the moon literally controls the tides of the
Mm-hmm.
ocean and how the ocean is something that shapes then the kind of face of the earth, the
Yep.
shoreline, right? And we get to live during a cool time where the planet's heating up and the ocean's eroding the shore, and we don't know how much more shore we're going to get. So that's neat. It's the revenge of the mom right there. But, I think that that is a really significant thing symbolically because it's as if to say the water of the unconscious is shaping the form of the earth that we live on. It
Oh
shapes
yeah.
that the terra firma that we get to stand on. And so we have to be in relationship with the waters of the unconscious in order to be actually on solid ground with ourselves in our waking life, right? Yeah, there's like a difference between the dream of the ocean and then the waking day world of
Yeah.
the earth, I think.
That was
Mhm.
really pretty, the way you put that. I agree, and I think also the fact that w- half the world will be underwater in 200 years or whatever they say to make us completely nihilistic, um, is I read somewhere that we have this kind of projection that like Mother Earth is we're wounding Mother Earth, and they're like, I wonder what would change in this patriarchal world that we live in, where we're just abusing the earth that we live in, if we were to start to realize that she's not wounded, she's taking her vengeance.
Yeah.
It's like that's what the ocean is doing.
Mhm.
Very much so. And that's how I feel about it, and it scares the crap out of me. And I think that that's this kind of, I just love this the way you put this devouring and healing, I guess,
Mhm.
aspects that the ocean presents to us. um there's like the I always love in these like movies where like Castaway, where they get stuck on the ocean and they're floating and they're like hopeless, that if you have like, if it's a good movie, they always have so much reverence for how beautiful it looks at the same time. And that's
Yeah.
always like so striking that you're in the like literally the most beautiful setting that you could imagine for yourself, and completely hopeless and lost to any kind of power that you might have. And I think it's a way that the ocean can remind us of our, I don't know, need to release and let life be what it has to be. And the moon tells us that too, in its changing tides and its changing rhythms in the cycles,
Yeah.
of shedding, and it tells us, let life be. It will change. It's not going to be the same tomorrow. It's not going to be the same in 6 hours. Let life be. And be small in it. Sometimes that is the most healing thing that we can do for ourselves, is
Oh
to
yeah.
allow ourselves to be as small as we really are.
Yes, I'm tiny, and I like to remind myself that. I think that that's all very that's all very pretty. And I was thinking as you were talking too about like the kind of almost like the ocean is different than other bodies of water because
Yeah.
it's salty.
Yeah.
Not just because it has a tide, and I know that rivers have currents and lakes can have currents too, but there's the salt
Yeah.
element of the ocean. So can you remind me about salt in alchemy? Isn't it related to Saturn, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
Or is
No,
it
I don't think you're
Mercury?
wrong about that. So there's quicksilver is one of the prima materia consists of, if I'm correct, sulfur,
Mm-hmm.
salt, and quicksilver, I think.
Yeah. And quicksilver is definitely Mercury
Yeah.
or Hermes.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious about that. And I think that in astrological magic practices, I'm pretty sure that I've read that salt is of Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
And so the point that I'm driving at here is that it's interesting if that is true, and I should probably verify that, but I think I'm right. Because Saturn is the planet that is a bit antithetical to the moon. The moon rules Cancer, Saturn
Mm-hmm.
rules Capricorn,
Mm-hmm.
and those two signs are opposite on the astrological wheel. When the moon is in Capricorn, it's thought to be in detriment. It's not comfortable there. So there's, and similarly, when Saturn is in Cancer, he's uncomfortable and he's not really at ease. But there's a necessary relatedness between the two of them that I think the ocean kind of captures. And maybe this is bringing us back to that devouring and nurturing sort of archetype. Saturn literally ate his children. So
Mm-hmm.
there's like a feeling here of, the earth and the water, the body in the soul, the body in the dream or in the emotional core,
Mm-hmm.
and how they have to kind of come together and be held in that
Yeah.
sort of special symbolic way
Yeah.
that I'd never thought about that before, but that is interesting.
The salt feels like, strangely, it feels like very human. Like there's like this
Yes.
very human idea of like saltiness. Like
Yeah.
we associate with like sweat and like,
Crying. Love to
yeah.
cry.
Mm-hmm. And but interestingly, I think that when I was a kid, it took me a really long time to understand why we can't just drink salt like seawater. It's like, it's water. So there's some salt in it. Like, why are people dying of thirst? I don't get it. Like, we have so much water. I even wrote like when I was like in 5th grade, I was like, I'm writing all these novels. So one of the novels I started was like ending like world thirst by, they just made machines to just take the salt out of the water. And I remember,
So smart.
I know, I remember talking to my mom being like,
If only they
why
would listen
haven't
to
they
you.
done this? Why don't they do that? I still don't really know why they don't do it, or why. I'm sure it's impossible for some reason, or probably
Probably
it's just
because some
expensive.
like global corporation owns the ocean and we don't even know it,
Yeah, they
and they
probably have
won't
it
let us
patented
do
and they
it
won't let anyone do it, and it's too expensive to
until
do.
the bitter end when we're all zombies.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but it's so interesting that even though the ocean is like the birthplace, mythologically, it's the birthplace of pretty much like everything.
Yeah.
So many stories come
And
from,
biologically too,
yeah.
right?
Yes,
Mhm.
we're in the fluid
Mhm.
of our mothers, and then we also were amoebas or whatever
Mhm.
billions of
Yeah.
years ago.
I'm
Um,
still an amoeba.
yeah,
Remember, I'm tiny.
you are
So
tiny.
right. So I think that you mentioned mythos
Yeah.
before, and we haven't really talked about any of the stories that correspond with this symbol.
Hmm.
And so I think that just in general, like in the Greco-Roman imaginary, the famous ocean god is Poseidon or Neptune, who rules over the seas. But there was also a titan before him named Oceanus, who was interestingly a river god, and the river kind of ran around the entire world, and he oversaw all of the flowing waters. Sometimes he's depicted with crab claws, like
Mm,
he's Cancerian. Other times he has the horns of a bull, which I have
interesting.
questions about. Yeah, there's like a
Sounds
lot
like
of
there was some mishmash going on
there
there.
was, yeah, some kind of cultural collaging happening
Yeah.
probably.
Hmm.
But if you think about it, like to me, again, like from my astrology perspective, the moon is exalted in Taurus. And so
Mm,
there's like a bull moon component that's not totally antithetical, but
sure.
yeah, it's interesting. It's the same thing with horses. Like sometimes horses are a symbol of Neptune, depending on if they have like webbed hooves or not in their art
Yeah.
depictions. So,
Yeah.
and then they're called hippocampuses, which is a part of the brain.
Yeah.
That's a whole other tangent that we could definitely not do right now, Christina. Anyway, the other, I think famous story is probably the Tiamat myth,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, if you wanna tell us about that a little bit, I like when you talk about Tiamat.
Tiamat was the Babylonian, right?
Mhm.
Goddess of the seas and the oceans, and she was the mother goddess, and so she birthed most of the gods or whatever from there. I don't know if she was mother of all the gods or if there were, because some of these cosmologies they have like random gods that come from random other places.
There's no true straight line with any of these
Yeah,
stories, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
but
Tell us what
she
you know.
she was like the mother goddess, and she was obviously beloved. And then we had the patriarchal takeover of the, I don't know, about 5,000 years ago or so, 4,000, whatever it might be. And she was then corrupted in and rewritten as uh, a warrior queen. She was like
Mhm.
she like incited some war among the gods, because she was so terrible, and she had to be taken down by Marduk, who was the kind of newcomer champion Herculean sort of dude. And so he destroyed her, with, I think he had a net and he had arrows, I think, and he had all these different weapons that he brought with him, and he conquered her and he cleaved her in half. And from those two halves, I think he made the sky and the earth, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess in that cosmology, then it would have been that everything probably would have been ocean
Yeah.
originally, since
Yeah.
she was the goddess of the ocean, and then from her desecrated corpse, he created the rest of the world. An interesting theory that I've read is there's this line in the Bible, in the very beginning of Genesis, where it's like they're describing God, and there's this line, gosh, I wish I knew it off the top of my head. It's like where it's like the breath upon the waters or something, that
Mhm.
like of what God is. And a lot of some scholars, feminist scholars, because of how, you know, not non-academic the translations of the early Bible were from
Mm.
their Aramaic original texts and all this stuff, that was Tiamat. That
Oh
there
my
are
god.
clear references to God being like this breath that flowed over Tiamat's waters,
Mhm.
and that they were. some kind of a union because, I know that these are very different cultures, but ancient Babylon and the ancient Hebrew peoples were, everybody's there at the same place. They're all in the same like smushed part of the world.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of syncretism and there was a lot of exchange, and there was a lot of, there's even a term in I think it's in the book of Moses where they reference briefly the abomination. And when they're worshiping the calves and they're like they're worshiping idols, the term that a lot of it has been translated to is that they were worshiping the abomination. And some scholars think that that was also Tiamat, that was her. And Tiamat's name is, I think, in the Bible itself. I think she also just comes up straight up.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so she's there, and she was such a powerful goddess. So we have this obviously connection of the ocean to the feminine, and this it's the womb of generation of all things, all the gods. I think it was, I mean, someone probably knows more than me, but all the gods came from her. And then the corruption of it is that she incited the war among them, that she was the cause of like the breakdown, which is upsetting. So that the patriarchal lesser god can come over and be a champion. And so there's also that like element of like the championing of over the gods, over the primordial gods, which is the foundation of patriarchy existing. It's the fact that we can have the hubris to defeat what is obviously way huger than us. It is the hubris of the ego to try to conquer the unconscious, and to and I think that maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm so scared of the ocean deep down, because I'm like, I know that that's wrong. There's this great section of Faust which is so weird and has captivated my imagination, I don't know why, so much, where at the very end of Faust, which is an enormous play in 2 parts written by Goethe, it goes everywhere. The first part of it is like a very straightforward, like, this is a play, here's the girl, here's the devil, blah blah blah. And then the second part is like Goethe's like, what are all the things I've ever thought? And then he just puts them down. And so at the end, Faust, who is, he sold his soul to the devil, so basically he can do whatever he wants, says, you know what I want? I want to become emperor, of course. And they're like, okay, you're emperor now, but like, you don't have land. There's no land for you to rule over because all these other emperors and kings have their own land already. So we can give you the title, but we can't give you the land. And he says, well, I'll take it. So he orders the land to be reclaimed from the sea. And so he has them like build this dam to dam back the sea and to take it for himself. And obviously that does not go well in the end.
That's wild. That is so wild.
And that has just like stayed in my head for years. That one idea of like, and the way Goethe talks about it, it's just like, of course, because he's an emperor and he's Faust and this is the new vision he has. And no one thinks that this is this egregious thing to do. Yeah. But me and my contemporary feminist perspective, I'm reading this and going, oh my God, he wants to reclaim control from the sea. That is what's happening. That's the world we live in.
I know. And I think that, number one, when am I going to read Faust? Maybe that's like a winter project for me.
Yeah, that feels like a winter project, or like a 3 winter project.
Yeah, a lifetime of winter project. But I think that that's my number one question. Number 2 is like the point that, in all of the kind of, in many of these cultural origin stories, there is that story of having to dominate the power of the feminine or the power of the ocean, the power of water. The Tiamat and Marduk story is replicated in the story of Apollo and the Python. And, the story, I think, too, of like Medusa being dominated by Perseus is another sort of emblem of, the snake moon goddess being dominated by the cult of patriarchal sun and lightning worshiping invaders who went into Mycenaean Greece. So there's just this, there is, wherever the ocean is, there's this kind of like simultaneity of, awe and reverence and beauty and knowing that it is the origin. And then also, in some people, the need to dominate and
Yes.
tame and contain, which is impossible. And so I think that you can even hold that in two ways. It's like the never ending sort of dialectic between masculine and feminine, or
Mm-hmm.
matriarchy, patriarchy, and also the conscious day world realm and the unconscious, which the ocean is always kind of like dragging, to give us that earth image back again. The ocean is always dragging the sand back into it and crushing it up and spitting it back out. And
Yep.
so there's no way that we can't do that. And that is one of the kind of primary foundational tensions of opposites that we
Mm-hmm.
live with. So,
Yeah.
so that's there.
I
Mhm.
think that if it all ends, that we give the world back to the sea. The sea earned it. It's the
I
seas to
agree.
begin with, and the ocean, she can have it back. She made it. She can take it. And this is again the nihilistic thing I've just accepted, and that's the only way I can accept living. Is that maybe the sea maybe it belongs to her anyway, and she should have it, and we should stop pretending like we have any right to be here.
Mm.
But I think we've done some good work talking about the ocean, and I love when we do these episodes and we go in surprising ways, and we don't know
Mhm.
exactly where we're going to land, and we don't land with the traditional like boop boop boop,
Yeah.
and then we kind of go beyond. So I think we did some good stuff.
I agree. Yeah, it's funny, Mariana and I are both so like neurotically interested in understanding everything that we talk about. And we used to kind of like prep, for these discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that lately we're just kind of rolling, and the threads that emerge in conversation are like way more fruitful than just being like, we have to make sure we
We're
say.
teachers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's cool to play. So
Mm-hmm.
thanks everyone for listening, and hopefully that's a good model too for letting yourselves just engage with a symbol
Yeah.
naturally and
Yeah.
not have it be a kind of too academically inclined
Yes.
endeavor, because that's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
The imagination is important here too.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Let's do a dream.
All right, let's talk about a dream.
If you're enjoying this podcast, we encourage you to leave a review or learn more about how you can support us on Mighty Networks, where you can get access to some exciting exclusive offerings. Or you can connect with us by sharing a symbolic experience, whether from a dream or synchronicity, for us to explore on the show. Thank you to today's sharer, and please tell us your symbolic experience or connect with us on our website, sorormysticapodcast.com.
Are you a small business looking to reach a targeted audience of people interested in all things esoteric? If this sounds like you, Soror Mystica would love to invite you to become an ad partner. We offer a highly tailored audience of mindful, curious, depth-seeking listeners, and we would be delighted to showcase your business and offerings to new hearts and new minds. Simply fill out an advertiser application form at our website, linked in the show notes below, or navigate to sorormysticapodcast.com/advertise with us.
Hello, my lovers of tarot, astrology, and the symbolic. Would you like to go on even deeper dives into topics that are even more niche and specialized and fascinating? Perhaps you'd like to explore angels in the tarot, or beasts in your dreams, or the thresholds of astrology. This is just a sampling of the bonus episodes we have over at our cloister. So go in the show notes and click the link and join us in even deeper conversations. We really hope to see you there.
So today we're actually going to talk about a dream that I had last week. And so the dream goes like this, and I guess I'll give a little bit of context after I tell the dream. Okay, so in my dream, I dreamt that I was walking through a house, and it was kind of like a mid-century modern looking house. And the most noticeable feature of it was that there were these large windows, which mid-century modern houses often have. And I was at a party at this house, and one of the windows had a big curtain over it. And so I pulled back the curtain and it looked out into a yard with a swimming pool. And there were like dozens of baby bears, like bear cubs, just like playing and swimming and kind of just capering around. And there was a mom bear just off in the distance, kind of watching them. And I was like, wow, that's so cute. And I tried to take a picture in my dream and I couldn't. My phone wasn't working. And that was just a dream
That's just the dream
detail.
thing.
Hmm. So that was kind of part number one. And then part number two was that I was dreaming that I was looking for a particular dress to wear. And I think it was I was looking for a wedding dress. And so I found this dress. It was hanging on a wall and it looked kind of medieval to me, like a medieval princess dress. It's like off the shoulder, but it's in these muted, dusty pinks and greens and browns. So it's not a wedding dress at all. And as I'm walking down an aisle, probably at a wedding, I hear people saying to each other that I am a Norn. And I
Mm.
think to myself, I'm a Norn? Oh my gosh, I had no idea. And the dream kind of ends there. So, you know, thematically, there's a lot going on here with like the maybe the mother child dynamic. The feminine is
Hmm.
very much here. But I'll let you take a crack at it, Mariana, before I start.
How are
Yeah.
they connected? Because they sound like two very different dreams.
It's just like I turn from the bear scene and I'm like just still walking through the house
I
and I'm
see.
like, oh, I need a dress, by the way,
Okay.
dream
So
self.
you're
Yeah.
just kind of still in the same setting, and then the
Hmm.
setting changes once you
Yeah.
pick up the dress and put it on. Okay, cool.
Hmm.
Um, it's so interesting and pretty, and also the different parts of it are so different, which is
Hmm.
striking to me. We have like one where we're literally in a mid-century modern house with a swimming pool. It's just about as, I mean, the mid-century modern places us a little bit in the past. Did it feel like it was an authentic mid-century modern or like a
It did.
modern? Okay.
No, it felt like it. Hmm.
Yeah. So then one part of the dream places you in the 1950s,
Hmm.
60s, and
Hmm.
then the second part of the dream places you in what, like the 1300s?
Yeah. You know.
So that's really interesting.
Hmm.
One thing that Jung said that was really cool to me, he had a very important dream, very significant dream for himself, where this is how he kind of like came up with the collective unconscious or the idea of it, or one of the things that inspired it, is that he was dreaming and like he's on the first level and it's like his normal house. And then he like descends, it goes to a second level and it's like a 18th century looking space. And then he
Yeah.
goes down another level and it's like a medieval space. And then
Hmm.
I think he goes down like one more and it's just like caves and
Yeah.
like bones and
I remember this. Yeah.
uh-huh.
It's
And
so
it's such an
interesting.
interesting dream because with each descent into the, deeper into the unconscious symbolically, we go back in time. So we connect farther back into some archetypal experience. So that's kind of one of the things that caught my attention is that the like time period is very specific in these dreams. And then
Hmm.
even the Norns are even farther back in time.
Hmm.
If we're thinking medieval, the Norns and the Norns, for people who don't know, are sort of like the Fates in the Greek mythology, but they're in Scandinavian mythology. They're what's the word I'm looking for? They're like
They're in
these
the sagas, right?
yeah, they're these
Mhm.
three deity girls, women. I think there's three of them, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Who they are somehow connected to the world tree Yggdrasil, I believe is
They
how it's.
water the world tree. Yeah.
Yes. And so they are the keepers of it, basically. So at some point, Odin, who is the god of wisdom, the All Father, the Zeus sort of figure, but not thunder god as much as he is like a wisdom god, which is interesting, which is
Mhm.
cool. He one day the story goes that he kind of like looked out at the world and said, I am the god of wisdom, and yet the world possesses more wisdom than I do. I must gain this wisdom. And so he goes to the world tree, and they say, well, if you want that wisdom, there's a price. And you have to hang on the world tree. And this is what the Norns, I think, tell him. And so he
Mhm.
agrees and he hangs on the world tree, but he has to put himself to the point of ultimate suffering. And so he has to pluck out his eye, and he stabs himself with a spear, and he doesn't eat for 9 days or drink, and he's just absolutely at the brink of death. And then once he has completely given himself over to the sacrifice, that's when the Norns say, cool, you're worthy. And then they give him the runes, which is what they alone had possessed up until this point. So that's
Mm-hmm.
that's the like origin myth of the runes. So the Norns are very much connected to this divination thing
Mm-hmm.
as well, and to this possession of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're also very much like the fates. And it's interesting because Christina is such a Greek oriented
Yeah.
person, that we get instead this Scandinavian myth that we're being pointed to, which is not really as much in your wheelhouse. You know about it, you're familiar with it, but it's not like where you center yourself. So I think it's interesting that the psyche was like messing with you a little bit. And it's like, don't think you know too much about what's going on here.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting. I never really think about the Norns. I really just think about my fates, my three fates.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the ways in which a different version of the same idea is being shown is really interesting. So I think that for all of us dreamers who are looking for ways of understanding ourselves through symbols of dreams, don't be afraid to kind of branch your language out into different, maybe cultural ideas,
Mm-hmm.
or remembering that things are most of the time pretty connected in terms of what comes through from, one dream symbol to another. Like if I'm connected to this idea of the fates, and I think about fate all the time because I'm an astrologer, and I'm like, is this fate? Is this, the wheel of time kind of coming through and making things happen? But yeah, seeing it from an alternative culture is a really interesting idea. Um, so I love that. Thank you for all of that. That's really pretty. I also think that there is this weird divination, yes, thing, but like me being a Norn is kind of curious. I do
Mm-hmm.
not think that I am a fate. Don't worry, everyone. I'm not a narcissist. But there was something about people knowing something about me that I didn't know, and I
Yeah.
think that that's kind of symbolic too. And then like bringing it back to the bears thing. I've had another dream of bears in the past year, but in this dream, the other dream that I had about a bear, I was like looking at a bear in an enclosure,
Yeah.
and the bear split itself into two bears and ran at me, and I had to stand like really tall to make myself big to scare the bears away. And so we have this other dream now with there are multiple bears again.
Multiples. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do bears symbolize for you? What do you associate with them?
I honestly think that they terrify me, but
Yeah.
they're also very comforting. So they're also kind of like a sea a seaside kind of feeling where it's
Absolutely.
like
Yes.
you can absolutely eat me up, but I also really feel comforted here.
Literally, the only other thing I have an irrational fear of is bears. Terrified of bears.
It's so
More
funny.
than sharks, more than alligators. Not bear. I
Uh,
cannot do bears. Um, comforting is like, what?
Yeah, no, there's something about their strength and their slowness that I'm like, this is a creature that can like survive and
Yeah.
that can, protect. And so like in my astrology, I have the fixed star Alcade conjunct my moon, and that's like the bear star.
Hmm.
It's the mother bear protecting star.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's like a lunar sort of theme here that's coming through.
Yeah. Well, they're around the pool, so they're around the body of water. So they,
Mhm.
you know, I think that that's interesting, and I think that with this dream, there's a lot of symbols in it, right? That you could think about. The bear obviously is about the maternal, because there is a mother bear and there's cubs, right? So we're talking about the maternal. We're talking about this vicious sense of protection that the mother bear will bring to protect her cubs. But there's a playfulness in it too, right? So the cubs are not in danger, um, and there's this setting to me is what's really interesting of the fact that we're
Mhm.
placed back in time a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
I almost wonder if it's an ancestor dream, a little
Mm.
bit. Like if there's something about looking back toward the people who would have lived in that, in your, ancestry, who would have lived in a home like that, your grandparents
Mhm.
maybe.
Mhm.
Um, and this kind of, I don't know, this, maybe your grandmother, offering some kind of maternal protection and encouraging you to play. I know
Mm.
that you like to speak to the people around you
Yeah.
from your past.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's a little question in my mind. And the fact that then we kind of jump back 800 years, and then I really like the idea of you finding the dress that's like destined for you. It
Mhm.
feels like very fairy tale ish, very fantasy ish, of like you are the chosen one. So there is this very pretty element of you stepping into some kind of archetypal power at the end of the dream. And you finding that that power is, even though it's like some kind of a wedding dress, is there any groom there? Does anyone show up to be a groom?
No, I'm
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Because it's not really about that. It's like the alchemical wedding more than it is the
Mhm.
real wedding
Yeah.
kind of thing, where it's like you are embracing this archetypal power of the Norn, symbolizing possibly wisdom, possibly goddesshood, possibly um this idea of fate for you
Mm, beautiful.
as
Yeah.
well, and
Mhm.
how the fate is coming to be as it will be, and there's no tension in that side of the dream. There's no real tension in the dream kind of at
No,
all.
it's just a series of strange images that feel loosely related, and I just don't know what is going on, and it's also so specific.
Yeah.
It's not like I had a dream that I went to the grocery store and I couldn't use my debit card or something. It's like these weird things that I don't often see, but now I'm cultivating a pattern with. And for those of you who aren't my best friend and I don't share every waking thought with, you would not know this, but I've been having a series of dreams about different feminine figures.
Yeah.
Like I've had a couple high priestess dreams. I've had a few dreams about like goddesses and statuary. I've had a lot of mother and child dreams recently. And it's like there's just something kind of percolating. And so I felt happy to share this today to kind of also mention that when we notice a thread and we don't even know what the thread is, I think it's important to collect those pieces of it and
Yeah.
kind of just keep letting them accumulate because maybe in 6 months' time, there will be another dream that kind of brings it together into focus a little bit more. And
Yeah.
yeah.
That happens a
Mhm.
lot. I
Mhm.
think that it's my favorite thing is like when you wake up from a dream and you're just sitting and thinking about it, and there was some little image, some little feeling, some setting that you were in, and you're like, I was there before and it was in a
Yeah.
dream, or I saw that thing before and it was in a dream, and like from like a year and a half ago or something.
Mhm.
And it's so cool when you realize that the unconscious, that lunar side of you, knows what it's doing and remembers. It creates these things intentionally. And it is
Mhm.
just such a wild feeling where I'm like, I've been in this house before. And I'm like, no, I haven't. I dreamed of that house like 3 years ago. And it was just a dream about looking for pennies or something random and had nothing to do with anything. But for some reason, it's a symbol that now I'm back in. And so, why is it there? What is the quality of it for me? So,
Mhm.
I'm glad you shared this one. It's very interesting. There's just so much that you could go
Yeah.
with, but I really like this. I would, if I were you, I would still sit with the idea of jumping back in time about, I don't know, 60 years, and
Mhm.
then the jumping back in time 600 years or whatever it is. So that
Mhm.
to me feels, and then also the hint at jumping back in time 600 years before that too,
Mm.
with the
Yeah.
Norns, because they're
Yeah.
much older than medieval stuff. So
Yeah.
very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
everyone for listening to that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what we've got.
Okay, so enjoy your scorching hot summers,
Mhm.
and go to the ocean maybe. Well, I'll try. I'm gonna think about going to the ocean this year. I only ever go to the ocean with you, you know?
That's so funny.
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't ever choose to go otherwise. Not
If
that
I
I
could
hate
plant
it,
myself
but
there
like
every single day, I would just do that and just do
it's
nothing else.
intense.
Like, eat fruit and stare
It
and
is
walk
quite
around.
nice. It is quite nice.
Mhm.
I need some nudging to get me to go though.
Mm.
All right, so we will see you all soon.
See you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining us in our conversation today.
Please consider supporting the podcast by leaving a review and following Soror Mystica wherever you listen.
You can also become a more active supporter and a member of the Soror Mystica community by joining us on our Mighty Networks platform.
If you have a symbolic experience that you'd like to share with us for the podcast, you can tell us all about it at sorormysticapodcast.com.
The music for this podcast is written and performed by me, Mariana Lewis, with special thanks to Stefan Lewis. You can connect with both Christina and myself on Instagram and get to know our work by clicking on the links in the show notes.
As the alchemical motto goes, as above, so below, as within, so without.
May this ancient wisdom continue to guide you deeper.
Until next time, take good care.